69-year-old Thomas Hagen, convicted of the 1965 assassination of Malcolm X, was paroled yesterday after serving 45 years of a 20-year-to-life sentence. But the question here is not whether a man convicted of murder can change and should be allowed to one day walk free. The point that we have to mention here is that when he actually walked out of the prison and into freedom, it was under the shadow of a sign naming a street in honor of the man that he once killed. It was Malcolm X Boulevard. So here we have to question how this man's legacy still lives on today. Joining us from our New York studio to discuss it, I have RT correspondent Marina Portnaya. Marina, first of all, tell me, were there any people out on the streets today perhaps that were angry or protesting because of this man's release?
Alona, well, nothing that we know of so far. As a matter of fact, if you turned on some of the local channels here in New York City, they were showing a full-screen picture of Thomas Hagen. There was no video of any protests or demonstrations taking place when he finally walked out to what we can call freedom. But many Malcolm X supporters and organizations did speak out condemning his release, saying that he should not have been paroled. And we have to mention, though, for the past 22 years, he was on a partial work release program where he was working during the week and spending 2 nights in prison. But we did know, I did find a quote from one of Malcolm X's daughters. She spoke to the press last month, Ilyasa Shabazz, and she said that she was ready to actually forgive her father's killer, and she said that she believes that he is regretful enough at this time in his life, and that she, in essence, feels that he was just one of the many pawns of her father's murder, and at this point, it is God that will have to judge him. But this is a story that did make headlines today in New York City, but not really the kind of outpouring kind of demonstrations that one would think would be taking place. Not that we know of, at least.
Well, Hagen actually, all of his statements as of late have been that he regrets his actions. And you can understand that if you look at how some of Malcolm X's speeches, some of what he said, still carries through today. First of all, I want to play us a clip from one of his speeches.
This is American democracy. And those of you who are familiar with it know that in America, democracy is hypocrisy. Now, if I'm wrong, put me in jail. But if you can't prove that a democracy is not hypocrisy, then don't put your hands on me.
Now, Marina, correct me if I'm wrong, but don't those sound like the same echoes that we're hearing from the Tea Party and from all of these polls that are showing how much distrust there is for the government right now in America?
Well, actually, to be technical, that is the exact quote I heard from Ralph Nader during the 2008 presidential elections. And yes, we do hear a lot of these complaints that democracy is hypocrisy. Some may draw a correlation between Malcolm X and the Tea Partiers, and some would say they couldn't be further from the same, because the Tea Partiers, they have their grievances and legitimate grievances. But Malcolm X, you know, when you compare them, Malcolm X was at some, you know, at the end of his life, was traveling all over the world. He was traveling to Africa, to Haiti, to Europe, to the Middle East, and he was saying that he was talking about, you know, the fights of black people all over the world, the oppressions they face, that this is a universal fight. This didn't just happen overnight after a financial collapse, and that's what we saw happen with the Tea Party movement, that, you know, when everybody started losing money and they started, you know, being affected, their personal homes, their personal investments, then we saw this uprising take place. Some would argue it took place after there was a black man elected president of the United States. But we do hear what Malcolm X was arguing in that clip you played, you know, democracy being hypocrisy. Yes, that is an argument that is still being carried out, still being vented by many Americans, many of which are members of the Tea Party, but many of which are not members of the Tea Party, still believe that there is a lot of hypocrisy in what is considered the U.S. democratic system.
And now, Marina, what do you think, how do you think the media would portray Malcolm X today? Because at the time, he was somebody that the government considered an enemy, someone that they were scared of, and in many ways you can say that there were also conspiracies, that there were plots to kill him at the time. Would he be deemed such a big threat today?
You know, that's a very interesting question, because while he was a very powerful figure during his life, I mean, his legacy, Malcolm X's legacy, is enormous. He is quoted and heralded by a lot of people that some would argue would criticize him during his life. You know, it's a very interesting question. I really don't even know how to answer it. I think that he would make headlines. I think that definitely we would be clipping his sound bites because he would speak his mind and he wouldn't be scared to speak his mind. And I think with the various opinionated media channels that we have now, some would like him and put him up on a pedestal, and some would condemn him. But I think that he would make headlines and he would cause a change, he would cause waves. And we do see that in today's day and age, even in the media, it's people that speak with such conviction like a Malcolm X that usually get a lot of attention. So like I said, his life was enormous, but I think his legacy is even greater and bigger and will live on for a very long time.
All right, that was Marina Portnaya in New York. The man convicted for Malcolm X's assassination was released from prison yesterday, and we're just discussing how his legacy still lives on today. We can hear echoes of some of his thoughts and his speeches in today coming from ordinary Americans. And one thing that Marina did mention was that this came to him after traveling around the world and a lot of experience. And I think here's an interesting quote also when it comes to Americans that he came up with, which says, you can't understand what's going on in Mississippi if you don't know what's going on in the Congo. Just something to ponder.